Good afternoon, everybody. Please take your seat. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, colleagues and friends. Welcome to the event Governing Sustainable, Climate Resilient, Equitable Urban and Peri-urban Food System Transformations. Field insights and policy innovations from Brazil, Spain, and Ethiopia. My name is Guido Santini. I am a program coordinator in the Plant Production and Protection Division at FAO, and today I am the chair of this event. Before we start, I would like to remind some housekeeping. The event is simultaneously translated, so you can choose between English and Portuguese. For those one online, you can click the icon for this interpretation. Today's event will be articulated in two main sessions. An initial session with two key introduction keynote speakers, and then there will be a moderated panel with different insights from different cities. Then there will be a Q&A session and closing remarks. Cities and city regions are no longer the last mile of food systems. They are the frontline actors for climate action, equity and nutrition, and eventually food system transformation. Our session links the governance elements of HLPE 19 with the resilience agenda of HLPE 20, and focusing on multi-level governance, aligning national frameworks with local and municipal actions through participatory multi-level governance that involves governments, civil society, academia, and private sector. The objective of this event is multifold. First is to showcase practical approaches to strengthen urban-rural linkages and make urban and peri-urban food system more inclusive and climate resilient. Second, to examine governance innovation from different cities. And third, to shape integrated policy pathways to connect food security and climate action. And finally, to foster collaboration among different actors from governments, civil society, and academia. At FAO, this agenda is very crucial. Through the FAO strategic framework, and in particular the program priority area on urban food systems, we put governance at the center to promote transformation of urban peri-urban food systems. Moreover, through the City Region Food System program, we help cities to assess food systems and to integrate this evidence in governance mechanisms and policy options and investment frameworks. Through the Green Cities initiative, we link food, nature, and health through multifunctional green infrastructure that embedded in urban planning. Together with these efforts, we offer tools and guidance that countries and cities can adapt and scale. I would like also to acknowledge and to thank the lead organizers of this event, FAO, the German government through the support of the City Region Food System Program, IFAD, the European Commission, IFPRI, the universities of Barcelona, Cape Town, and Galway, the government of Brazil, CONSEA, the government of Ethiopia, GAIN, HLP, FSN, and IPES Food. A long list indeed. I will start with two keynote interventions to set the scene. Elisabetta Resine from HLP, FSN, IPES Food, and president of CONSEA, who will connect global recommendation with national social participation mechanism. And Daniel Resnick from IFPRI, Senior Research Fellow at IFPRI, bringing evidence on urban governance and policy implementation for equity and resilience. Later, there will be a panel moderated by Professor Charles Spillane from University of Galway in Ireland, who will guide a solution-oriented exchange towards actionable, scalable pathways. Without further ado, I will leave the floor to Elisabetta for the first keynote. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I will speak in Portuguese, so please use your phones. Vou apresentar brevemente. My clock. Sorry. Yeah. Vou apresentar brevemente os resultados e as principais conclusões de 2 relatórios do painel de especialistas, que é um dos grupos que integram o Comitê de Segurança Alimentar Mundial como um todo. O painel de especialistas tem a responsabilidade de receber demandas temáticas que o comitê decide, né, os Estados-membros, prepara esses relatórios, e esses relatórios eles são a base ou ponto de início dos processos de convergência de políticas ou elaboração de diretrizes voluntárias. Depende muito da decisão da plenária qual instrumento vai ser desenvolvido. É um relatório que articula o que temos de mais atualizado em termos de evidências científicas, produção acadêmica, mas ele não é um relatório acadêmico, simplesmente. Ele é um relatório que dialoga muito com a questão das políticas públicas que estão sendo implementadas em diferentes países. Esses 2 relatórios, que eu vou tratar de uma maneira muito rápida, mas tento que seja de uma maneira articulada, é o relatório número 19, que foi apresentado o ano passado, e na plenária de ontem, o resultado da convergência de políticas foi aprovado, e o relatório 20, que foi apresentado a sua versão inicial, o texto do relatório ontem, que é sobre a resiliência dos sistemas alimentares. O anterior era a relação urbana e periurbana para a segurança alimentar e nutricional e a articulação urbano-rural. Quem leu esses documentos, sejam os relatórios ou o documento que foi aprovado ontem, evidencia de uma maneira muito objetiva o quanto eles são articulados. Há uma demanda da realidade para que tanto pensemos o urbano e o rural de uma maneira articulada, enquanto sistemas alimentares que não são fragmentados, e sim, até sob um determinado ponto de vista, são articulados, são um contínuo, e a questão da resiliência, que é uma qualidade urgente que nós precisamos imprimir na nossa agenda de segurança alimentar e nutricional. Eu vou pular essa parte, porque tenho certeza que nossos outros participantes vão tratar dessas questões que estão relacionadas ao quanto o ambiente alimentar urbano é hoje uma questão central, não só porque o mundo já é urbano, mas também porque durante muito tempo, historicamente, a própria gestão municipal abriu mão desse papel. A gestão municipal cuida da mobilidade, da questão da habitação, da saúde, mas a questão alimentar não era uma temática da gestão municipal. E, consequentemente, o maior número de pessoas que vivem hoje nesse planeta estão nos centros urbanos e estão à mercê de processos que organizam a alimentação na cidade, que não necessariamente estão dirigidas a garantir que haja alimentos adequados e saudáveis em qualquer parte da cidade, que esses alimentos tenham preços e qualidade adequados, etc. Então, hoje, já há um tempo, há uma chamada para que as cidades tomem para si também essa responsabilidade de organizar a alimentação no ambiente urbano. Há alguns princípios, né, que guiam os 2 relatórios, e são princípios que dialogam de uma maneira muito contínua, muito articulada, né? Os relatórios, eles tratam de, primeiro, a questão do direito humano, seja ele a alimentação, seja ele as cidades, são absolutamente eixos transversais. São tratados de maneira distinta, porque o foco de um relatório e outro também é distinto, apesar de serem temas que conversam, mas a questão do direito é uma questão transversal. Por que isso? Porque a partir da adoção do direito, seja ele a alimentação, seja ele as cidades, você coloca princípios organizadores das políticas públicas, né? E quais são esses princípios que dirigem os 2 relatórios? Um é a questão de avançarmos na direção da equidade, reduzir drasticamente as diferentes formas e expressões das desigualdades. O outro é outra maneira de nós, enquanto seres humanos, enquanto comunidades e coletivos, nos relacionarmos às cidades, com a natureza, perdão. E também o que tanto num relatório quanto no outro aparece é nós nos orientarmos pelos princípios Panther, né? Que todos, bom, em geral, nós, de uma maneira ou de outra, lidamos com essa perspectiva da participação, da responsabilidade, da não discriminação, da transparência, da dignidade humana, do empoderamento e das ações baseadas no Estado de Direito. Esses são princípios também que dialogam com os próprios princípios dos direitos humanos. Tanto um relatório quanto o outro, logicamente, adotaram teorias de mudança, né? Em relação ao relatório do urbano e periurbano e o contínuo urbano-rural, há todo um cuidado e todo um conjunto de recomendações que estão dirigidos a dar transparência aos processos de definição e implementação de políticas públicas. Isso está relacionado diretamente a um processo de governança democrática dos sistemas alimentares como um todo e dos sistemas alimentares urbanos em particular. Há um conjunto de medidas também dirigidas a dar prioridade a situações e comunidades em situação de maior vulnerabilidade, tendo como talvez o princípio mais guarda-chuva de todos, que é nos dirigirmos a processos de redução das diferentes formas de desigualdade. O relatório 20, um minuto, meu Deus, impressionante isso, como 6 minutos. O relatório de resiliência é um relatório que eu realmente sugiro que todas e todos leiam, caso ainda não tenham feito, porque ele adotou uma teoria, uma perspectiva de resiliência que está relacionada a um processo de redução das desigualdades enquanto eixo estruturante de todos os processos de definição, de adoção de medidas para aumentar a nossa resiliência. E são medidas de resiliência que têm um caráter proativo. Não resiliência no sentido de lidarmos com as consequências, mas resiliência ligada a prevenirmos as consequências. Isso parece só um jogo de palavras, mas isso não é, porque muda a qualidade de todas as ações. Vou passar rapidamente só para o último slide, que é um conjunto de recomendações. E vocês vão ver que essas recomendações, elas estão ligadas a questões que se articulam o tempo todo. Uma questão central, que também é uma discussão central do próprio Comitê de Segurança Alimentar, é nós avançarmos no sentido de um processo de governança multinível, multiparticipativo e transparente, no sentido de que principalmente aqueles que são os portadores de direitos tenham voz ativa e informada nos processos decisórios e nos processos de implementação. O outro é você ter mecanismos também que façam o que se chama no relatório de coerência de políticas. Nós também perseguimos, logicamente, um processo que faça com que as ações dialoguem entre si, criem uma coerência, porque sabemos que nenhum dos nossos desafios pode ser suplantado com uma ação em si ou um programa em si, por melhor planejado e implementado que seja. E outro, vou fechar, o outro é o compromisso, como eu disse, com a equidade e com a transparência e a prestação de contas. Obrigada.
Obrigado. Obrigado, thank you, Elisabetta, for keeping the time. And now the floor is to Danielle.
Okay, thank you so much, Guido. Thanks to all of you for joining us today in person or online. Real pleasure to be with you today. So I think my job is to be a little bit of a bridge between the fantastic presentation that Elisabetta has just given on kind of the two reports and the different interventions at the country level that you're going to hear in just a few moments. So just waiting for the presentation to come up. And I'm definitely going to do this through a governance lens. As Elisabetta just emphasized, governance was, one of the recommendations that came through both of the last two HLPE reports. And one of the key drivers from HLPE 19, of which I had the pleasure of contributing to under the guidance of Jane Battersby, we really showed that governance was one of the 5 main drivers of the urban and peri-urban food systems. That's it there on the left that you have your arrow on. Okay, so Elizabeth has already just shown this diagram that you see on the left. So you can see strength and governance is one of those 5 key drivers. And then in the report, we try to take a deep dive on governance. We have a whole chapter on this. And we tried to show how nested the relationships and institutions are for promoting urban and peri-urban food systems. The range of different actors need to be taken into account: private sector, civil society, the various dimensions going on at the subnational level, the various entities you need, from tax revenue agencies to urban development ministries at the national level. And then, of course, there's a variety of international actors as well, including transnational networks of mayors through C40, through Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, UN Habitat, et cetera. Okay, in my brief intervention, I want to just not delve into all the details that are in that chapter, but to highlight some 3 high-level kind of governance constraints we talk about in the reports, and then allude to what I think the subsequent panel will be talking about in that regard. So the first one is with regards to coordination. And here we really highlight that there's a huge coordination issue on the governance front when you're trying to improve peri-urban and urban food systems. And first and foremost, need to be thinking about the type of urban area that you're considering. If you're talking about a large metropolitan area, you need to have a lot of coordination across multiple municipal entities. You think about Mexico City, for instance. I mean, over 4 dozen municipalities that comprise the metropolitan area. So a huge amount of coordination there. Very different than if we're talking about conflict-affected cities, if we're talking about Bamako or Khartoum or Pemba or Port-au-Prince, where the issues there may be less about how you ecologically source for school feeding programs. It may be more about how do you prevent insurgents from bombarding the city and creating a humanitarian emergency. We also talk about the degree of decentralization, how that's really important to contextualize for what's viable or not in terms of policy, variation between federal and unitary systems, the degree to which you have strong mayors versus weak mayors, how fiscally decentralized local governments are, and whether they actually have the administrative authority to act in the different food system domains that we think are key. This can be really pronounced when you have federal systems. So we just put a quote up from a recent publication that's looking at Cape Town. South Africa is embedded in a federal structure, and the study was highlighting, the responsibility for food systems is not really at the provincial level, it's at the national level. If you go to the national level, they say it's a municipal responsibility. If you go to the municipal level, they say they don't have any money to actually do anything. So, it's not, no one's really being accountable for food system interventions. And then in some respects, it varies depending on the issue area you're talking about. Are you talking about disaster climate resilience? Are you talking about helping informal market workers? And we've shown some of the complexity of this in Ghana for metropolitan areas. If you want to work and support policy interventions on informal market workers, it's pretty complex, the range of departmental entities at the metropolitan level, the national level, and then even the range of informal actors, including market queens that you need to engage with. In addition to the coordination issue, we have the implementation issue. It seems the clicker's a bit stuck. I don't know if someone can help with the clicker. But the next issue we talk about is the policy implementation challenge. We have a huge degree of diversity in terms of fiscal resources to actually implement policies for urban food systems. So here we've taken some data from the OECD Subnational Governance Finance Observatory. You can see the variety in terms of revenue that's available per inhabitant subnationally. And I've highlighted at the top some of the countries that you're going to hear about in a moment: Brazil, Ethiopia, and Spain. They all happen to actually be federal countries. And you can see the variety in resources that are available in purchasing power parity per inhabitant there. You can also see the variety of sources that are available. I mean, most subnational entities are highly dependent on intergovernmental transfers. Very few have tax own source revenue that they can mobilize for investments. And then lastly, if we turn to just the next slide, please. then we look at the third dimension on policy contention. And this has multiple dimensions to it. First and foremost, and this is something our GAIN colleagues have piloting in their work as well, informal markets, for instance. On the one hand, policymakers may see these as critical sources of tax revenue and a major source of food security for the urban poor. On the other hand, you see a lot of discourse about urban informal markets being food safety hazards or being the antithesis of modern food distribution efficiency. Jane Battersby as well, she's been highlighting that we have this tension about food in the city and food for the city. So food in the city, where a lot of interventions are focused on market upgrading, urban agriculture, solidarity kitchens, versus food for the city, which is more about territorial markets, city-urban food systems. So how do you produce more food for the city? And so there's very little interaction often between those two, food and the city. Layered on top of that, we have political economy dynamics that are quite pronounced. Urban areas are often where opposition parties initially get their foothold on the national political scene. So you often have instances of vertically divided authority, where national governments may not be incentivized to provide intergovernmental transfers to local governments for urban food system strategies. And then we have a lot of variety in terms of subnational autonomy from political interference. I've put up a graph of this that uses the varieties of democracy index of elected local government autonomy. You can see in parts of Africa and Asia, we have much lower autonomy for subnational governments than in other parts of the world. So finally, what does this mean in terms of policy pathways? And we highlight a lot of these in the HLP 19. One is building. It's better to build on extant intergovernmental or multi-sectoral mechanisms to address coordination issues rather than institutional layering, rather than creating some new institution to deal with those tensions and creating another kind of bureaucratic layer. And I think Brazil, provides very good examples of that, how they mobilize extant multi-level governance mechanisms to do that. And I'm sure we'll hear about that in a moment from Patricia. Secondly, the way that we can be better mapping our food systems, including through the Ethiopia Eco Food Systems Project, but also mapping institutional mandates for different functions within cities and seeing ways that we can actually attach accountability metrics for performance. So it's not that case where, we saw from South Africa, the Cape Town example, where everyone says, this is not really my problem or we don't have the funding for this. And then thirdly, there's a growing amount of research that's showing that it's more effective to talk about and develop urban food systems through kind of cross-sectoral and cross-jurisdictional urban food system strategies where you have all entities kind of coming to the table rather than having separate policy interventions by different city departments. This is something that I think Anna will highlight in the case of Spain and particularly with Barcelona. I think she'll also highlight some of the opportunities and challenges with food policy councils and food policy networks using the Barcelona example, showing the ways in which they can mobilize transnationally experience and resources and capacities that may not be available in the local context due to some of the implementation constraints I alluded to. So let me stop there and hand back over to Guido. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniele and Elisabetta. I think this was a perfect link to the next session, where we will have practical insights from 3 cities: Barcelona online, where we have Anna, Ethiopia, and Brazil. So I will leave the floor to Charles to lead and to moderate this session. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, and in present and online, thank you all for your participation in today's important side event. So Guido, Elisabetta, and Danielle, they've done a really wonderful job of setting the scene, the context, and also the challenge that is the frame of this side event. And so we hope for a quite interactive event within the time frame that we have. So we'd welcome questions from the audience here in person and reflections if we have time within this session. For those of you that attended the CFS 53 plenary session, you'll have noted that Dr. Balangi indicated that cities and rural areas must evolve together. And indeed, a key policy milestone has been achieved this week with the endorsement by the CFS 53 of the policy recommendations on strengthening urban and peri-urban food systems. We also heard important interventions by the representatives of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, UN Habitat, and broad-level support and guidance from the members of the CFS. So it was really emphasized that cities are where policies become realities, and where the different levels of government need to work hand in hand, which indeed is a key slogan and a motivating point for the FAO. So clearly we need to hear from the key actors and voices on the ground in our cities, and really that brings me to our esteemed speakers and participants here today. So I'm going to introduce, we have 3 speakers, 2 in person and 1 online. So we have Patricia Chavez Gentil, who's the Director of the Department for the Promotion of Adequate and Healthy Eating at the Ministry of Social Development and Assistance of Brazil. So very much welcome Patricia's intervention. And then we have Ana Moragues Faz who's the Director of the Food Action and Research Observatory, FAO, and also who's an Associate Professor in the Faculty of Economics and Business at the Universitat de Barcelona. And finally, we have Alimse Sargawi, who's the Head of the Food and Nutrition Office at the Ministry of Agriculture of Ethiopia, and also the Chair of the National Nutrition Sensitive Agriculture Platform and the Agri-Food Systems Forum. So we have excellent expertise situated and embedded within the national systems and within the cities from these 3 countries. So at that, I'm going to hand over to Patricia for her intervention. And we try to keep all of these interventions to 10 minutes because we have a limited time frame for this session, so we have time for questions and answers from the audience. Thank you.
Boa tarde, professor Chay, muito obrigada. Cumprimento aqui a todos e todas. Vou escrever minha fala, que é para não passar do tempo. Para nós é um prazer estar aqui representando o governo brasileiro nesse momento do CSA dedicado, nessa agenda dos sistemas alimentares urbanos. Eu estou aqui para apresentar a Estratégia Nacional de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional para as cidades, que nós intitulamos como Alimenta as Cidades, que é uma estratégia que tem como objetivo levar e induzir políticas públicas que melhore e que amplie o acesso a alimentos mais saudáveis nas cidades brasileiras, sobretudo para públicos mais vulnerabilizados, para a população mais pobre do Brasil. O Brasil é um país majoritariamente urbano, com 87% da população vivendo em cidades. Das 6,4 milhões de pessoas que ainda estão em insegurança alimentar grave, 5,2 milhões moram nas cidades. A fome urbana tem características diferentes da fome rural, é marcada por desafios de acesso e distribuição de alimentos, circuitos longos de produção e consumo, renda e preço de alimentos, e nós precisamos de políticas públicas que organizem o abastecimento alimentar, que torne os alimentos mais acessíveis à população na perspectiva da equidade, da justiça social e não apenas na perspectiva mercadológica. É importante reforçar que estamos falando de fome, não só da falta de alimentos, mas também da qualidade dos alimentos. 61% dos adultos no Brasil estão com excesso de peso, que está intimamente ligado a ambientes alimentares obesogênicos em territórios periféricos, onde o acesso físico e financeiro a alimentos é mais limitado e os impactos das mudanças climáticas são mais severos. A Estratégia Alimenta as Cidades, ela foi lançada em 2023, por meio de um decreto presidencial, com o objetivo, então, de aumentar a produção, o acesso e o consumo de alimentos e segurança alimentar e nutricional em territórios urbanos periféricos. É uma iniciativa multinível, intersetorial e com participação social, ancorada no Sistema Nacional de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional, que é a nossa arquitetura de governança, criada desde 2006, que oportuniza a intersetorialidade por meio da Câmara Interministerial de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional e a participação social por meio do Conselho Nacional de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional, CONSEA Nacional. E essas instâncias se reproduzem nos 27 estados e também na grande parte dos municípios brasileiros. E especificamente essa estratégia envolve o Ministério do Desenvolvimento Social, envolve o Ministério do Desenvolvimento Agrário, a Companhia Nacional de Abastecimento e o Ministério das Cidades. Nós temos 102 cidades aderidas a essa estratégia, são cidades acima de 300 mil habitantes e 18 cidades do Rio Grande do Sul, que foi o estado foi muito afetado pelo um desastre climático e que desmontou todo o sistema alimentar urbano. Nessa cidade somam em torno de 76 milhões de pessoas. A estratégia tem 8 eixos de trabalho que induzem o rol de políticas públicas da produção ao consumo. O primeiro eixo, que está relacionado a acesso, que é por meio de equipamentos públicos e sociais de segurança alimentar e nutricional. Nós estamos falando de restaurantes populares, cozinhas comunitárias, voltados a públicos mais vulnerabilizados. Um segundo eixo, de disponibilidade de alimentos. Estamos falando de equipamentos de abastecimento que garantem acessibilidade física a preços melhores para a população mais vulnerabilizada. Estamos falando de feiras, sacolões populares, para oportunizar os alimentos mais perto da população, ambientes alimentares saudáveis. Nesse momento a gente fala das escolas, tornar as escolas espaços formadores de hábitos mais saudáveis, produção de alimentos nas cidades, né, como um grande fomento à agenda de agricultura urbana e periurbana. Um quinto eixo sobre perda e desperdício de alimentos na perspectiva da circularidade, educação alimentar e nutricional, articulação e integração de políticas nos diferentes sistemas de segurança alimentar e nutricional, da saúde e da assistência social, na perspectiva dessa governança intersetorial e cooperação horizontal. Temos uma estrutura de implementação, acho que bloqueou aqui, uma estrutura de implementação, um processo de implementação estruturado em 4 passos nas cidades. Um primeiro passo que está relacionado a diagnóstico do sistema alimentar, local, o desenvolvimento de uma rota de implementação que combina programas federais com inovações locais, o monitoramento e avaliação das ações e o fortalecimento da cooperação nacional e internacional entre as cidades. Nós temos uma equipe organizada para isso, né? O governo federal oferece apoio político, suporte técnico, mentoria, ferramentas de diagnóstico e fortalecimento das capacidades locais, e também temos um financiamento de programas federais de acordo com a demanda e maturidade das cidades, porque cada cidade tem uma realidade diferente. Então, se juntarmos tudo isso, podemos dizer que hoje temos um financiamento em torno de 20 milhões de dólares para essas cidades. Temos muitos parceiros envolvidos, como o Instituto Comida do Amanhã e várias universidades, como a Universidade de Brasília, a Universidade de São Paulo e a Universidade do Rio Grande do Sul e de Minas Gerais. Em 2 anos já realizamos um conjunto bem expressivo de encontros técnicos, oficinas com gestores, lideranças, conselhos e movimentos sociais. E em 2026 nós estamos projetando a ampliação para 1.000 cidades, para dar mais escala, incluindo em municípios de médio porte também. Aqui é só um exemplo de uma publicação recente que nós fizemos para trazer um pouco das inovações locais de cada cidade, reconhecendo aí as especificidades do que as cidades já estão fazendo na sua transformação dos sistemas alimentares. Também fizemos um estudo, que é um estudo sobre os desertos e pântanos alimentares nas grandes cidades. Temos cerca de 25 milhões de pessoas, de brasileiros nessas cidades, que vivem em desertos alimentares e 15 milhões que vivem em pântanos alimentares. E isso implica em desenvolver políticas e projetos que respondam a essas diferentes especificidades locais. Aqui a gente tem um exemplo de um mapa de um município de Fortaleza, que é um município da região Nordeste brasileira, que ilustra um pouco aí das iniquidades de acesso a alimentos saudáveis em termos de desertos e pântanos alimentares. Aqui é um mapa dos desertos e aqui é um mapa dos pântanos. É claro que a nossa prioridade não são todos os desertos alimentares, mas por cima desse mapa a gente consegue plotar quais são os espaços e os territórios onde tem maior contingente populacional e maior vulnerabilidade, que certamente é o foco de atenção aí dos municípios desenvolverem suas políticas públicas. Além disso, eu queria dar aqui o destaque a três grandes ofertas do governo federal para essas cidades. A primeira está relacionada com o programa de cozinhas solidárias. É um programa que apoia iniciativas da sociedade civil. Temos hoje em torno de 1.200 cozinhas habilitadas que recebem apoio financeiro para ofertar refeições, recebem alimentos da agricultura familiar por meio das compras públicas e a capacitação e formação. É um programa fundamental nas periferias urbanas, que promove inclusão social e é uma estratégia também de resistência climática. Um segundo programa é relacionado ao Programa de Aquisição de Alimentos, é um dos programas mais antigos de compra pública do Brasil, que adquire esses alimentos e oferta esses alimentos para os equipamentos públicos e sociais e da assistência social, além das escolas também, e todos os municípios recebem apoio para implementar esse programa. E o terceiro programa, que merece destaque nesse cenário, que é o Programa de Agricultura Urbana, que também o governo federal é um programa intersetorial, que envolve outros ministérios também, e oferece um apoio para as cidades de acordo com o estágio de maturidade das cidades, porque nem todas as cidades desenvolvem agricultura urbana da mesma forma. Algumas cidades mais iniciais, outras cidades já têm um pouco mais de organização. Então, a gente oferta ou formação de liderança para os iniciantes, ou financiamento para as unidades produtivas e comunitárias, além de um suporte técnico para os marcos legais locais que garantam terra, assistência técnica, competências locais. Por fim, finalizando, nesse marco da estratégia Alimenta Cidades, também dialogamos com as cidades sobre a necessidade de convergência de políticas públicas que tem uma abordagem integrada às diferentes crises. O modelo hegemônico do sistema alimentar contribui com 70% das emissões de gás de efeito estufa, gerando as alterações climáticas com efeitos na produção, abastecimento e consumo de alimentos, determinando a insegurança alimentar e nutricional e a má nutrição. Então, recentemente, nós publicamos no Congresso Brasileiro de Agroecologia, que aconteceu semana passada, o Marco de Referência de Sistemas Alimentares e Clima, que é um instrumento técnico e político, participativo e baseado em evidência científica que promove a convergência e coerência das políticas públicas de alimentação e clima. Esse marco ele se fundamenta nos princípios do direito humano à alimentação adequada, soberania alimentar, justiça climática, federalismo climático, traz enfoque sistêmico e de participação social, e reconhece que os sistemas alimentares são a uma só tempo e causa e consequência da crise climática, e propõe rotas para uma transição justa em duas dimensões, que é uma dimensão caminhos para a governança democrática multinível e um outro caminhos de transição de sistemas alimentares saudáveis e sustentáveis. Isso é um tema que entra nesse processo do Alimenta Cidades, ofertando aí para os municípios também um olhar convergente dessa relação entre alimentação, clima e sistemas alimentares. Por fim, eu queria que, para a gente conseguir catalisar a inovação e a cooperação entre as cidades, nós lançamos, em parceria com o Programa Mundial de Alimentos, o Alimenta Lab, que é um laboratório de inovação em políticas públicas e é um repositório de experiências focado em sistemas alimentares e clima, convidando aí os países a submeterem suas iniciativas. Eu tenho uns cartõezinhos aqui que eu queria, para quem tiver interesse. E aí eu finalizo por aqui, ficando à disposição para questionamentos.
Thank you, Patricia, for that excellent, wonderful overview of the groundbreaking work underway in Brazil. I should highlight we're running a little bit over time here, so I'm going to ask the speakers to stick to time, or perhaps trim a little bit off the time, so that we have some time left for questions and answers from the audience. Otherwise, we'll have a limited questions and answers session. So that brings us on to our next speaker, who's Ana Moreguas Foz from Barcelona. And so over to you, Ana.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this panel. As I was introduced before, I will share the case of Barcelona. I cannot see the slides right now. I don't know if they are being presented.
Just one moment, Ana.
Okay. I can start speaking in order to gain kind of like to not delay the presentation given the time constraints. So next slide. I want to start the presentation by stating how next slide. Local powers have shaped Barcelona's food system through centuries. Like many cities, across the world. That means kind of like through famines, through wars, through riots, through dictatorships, and also through the democratic transition that we lived in Spain. And through that time, a range of policy instruments and institutions have been employed, from more regulatory and coercive tools when we had public bakeries, we had taxes, we had maximum prices, to more like softer and behavior-oriented approaches, which are the norm right now. In the current context, Barcelona is facing many challenges, like many European global cities, and these challenges are related to our food system, but also closely linked to access to housing, to inequalities. We have the latest data that we have shows that in some parts of the city, as much as 20% of the population suffers from some form of food insecurity in Barcelona. We also have challenges related to touristification and the expulsion of local residents, and the deep transformation of food environments towards food to address this and cater for these 28 million tourists that come every year to our city. And of course, climate change. As one of the cities in the Mediterranean basin, we're facing increasing droughts and also intense heat waves, which are challenging not only urban and peri-urban agriculture, but also the living conditions of the city. In this intervention, I'm going to mostly focus on the policy innovations in the last 10 years, and not so much in the specific programs, but in these elements that Danielle, for example, highlighted around the multi-actor, multi-level, and multi-sectoral innovations. Next slide. Next slide. So in the next slide, you can see one of the key policy innovations that have happened in the last 10 years in Barcelona. Since in 2015 signed the Milan Food Policy Pact, has been developed this integrated urban food strategy, which in the process more than 1,000 people participated from all over the city, and more than 23 working sessions were held. As you can imagine, this strategy covers like all the different activities of the food system and all the different sectors, but it is also important to understand how it was developed and in which context. And in this sense, there was a previous like more narrow strategy focusing on some aspects more related to show food supply chains and public procurement, that it got expanded as the conversation was also unfolding. So key events in the city, policy events such as the approbation of the climate plan, but also plans and strategies related to social and solidarity economy, as well as global events such as the C40 declaration on climate and food that Barcelona took part of, have been shaping the agenda of the city. Finally, in 2021, Barcelona hosted the Milan Pact Global Forum, and they created a context where many of these conversations with a very wide, diverse number of factors happen in the city that led to the strategy, which was also supported by previous documents on how we define locally sustainable food, what does it mean in practice, and also what is the state of the city in terms of like how is it fed, that you have the examples. Next slide. However, Barcelona, it is embedded in a wider context, of course. Barcelona is the capital of Catalonia, which is an autonomous community or a region within Spain with 7.7 million inhabitants, but it's also the capital of the metropolitan region, who has 3.3 million inhabitants. Furthermore, work in the city has showed us, and we have different structures that support that the actual functioning of the city, its mobility, its transport, and different like economic dynamics really expand to 5.5 million, what we call the region, the metropolitan region of Barcelona. Next slide. And within these different layers, there has been a lot of innovation regarding food governance. So we have what is happening in Barcelona in terms of the Barcelona Food Strategy, approved in 2022 by all parties of the council, which also created a food policy council attached to it. But before that, there was already a civil society network that was happening in the city, focused around agroecology and food sovereignty, that was interacting constantly with the city council. This is at the city level, but at the metropolitan level, there was also an initiative, a participatory one as well, to create a region food charter in 2019, where many municipalities adhered to. And in 2022, a food mission was developed for this metropolitan region in order to increase the amount of local food that was consumed within the area. At the Catalan level, we also have a strategic food plan, which also tries to work through different elements of the food system and integrate the different sectors, and a Catalan Food Council. And as one of the legacies of hosting the Milan Food Pact in the city, in 2023, a joint office for sustainable food was created. This joint office was an essential tool that links the city of Barcelona with the metropolitan area and the regional government in order to align policies and actions. Next slide. Not only Barcelona is integrating all these different spaces and creating different governance mechanisms, but it's also actively participating at the national and international level through the Spanish network of municipalities for agroecology, and is also an active member of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. One of the key initiatives that Barcelona led as well was creating the Barcelona Challenge for Good Food and Climate, which I don't know if you're aware of, but last week in the global forum that took place in Milan, many of these recommendations from this challenge and monitoring indicators were adopted as part of the new text of the pact. The city also participates actively at different international networks such as Eurocities or ICLE or C40. And this is important because it not only establishes partnerships and brings forward the agenda locally and internationally, but it also creates opportunities to generate joint projects and also deep learning across different cities. Next slide. So I wanted to highlight that within these multiple levels, these multiple networks and levels of food governance, which involve different actors and sectors and different actors and sectors, I want to highlight 5 key elements that I think that are important. In the case of Barcelona, what we're trying to create is an ecosystem that supports resilience when shocks happen, but also when changes happen at different spaces, and also supports ongoing transformation of the food system. The first aspect is the importance of evidence, and here you have a map of food swamps in the city. We also created maps of like food deserts and food swamps in the city, and that informs what type of policies we need and what are the key gaps and challenges that we're facing. But we're also combining that with a very close relationship with the lived experience of citizens and what is happening on the ground and how these experiences translate to that everyday life. As I mentioned before, learning is at the core of many of the activities that are happening in Barcelona and its metropolitan area, as well as the region, through international networks, but also in a strong connection with different actors of the city. Next slide. We also need to highlight that not only is important this creation of spaces or developing of new spaces of interaction among different sectors and actors, but also being aware that many of the changes that are happening in the city are not only being designed and implemented through these formal spaces, but also through informal networks. And we have here a mapping of different food sharing initiatives in the city led by civil society that are really articulating many of the sustainability challenges that we have around food in the city, where we have hundreds of initiatives not connected in a constant way to these formal spaces. And it's important to recognize that capacity. In that sense, we're able to create these loose and formal networks as well that are adaptable to changes in political cycles, changes in political agendas. If there are changes in some municipalities or in a specific sector, we're able to activate the other multi-level networks that are working and the different actors in order to keep on pushing for a long-term transformation of the agenda. And in this sense, this diversity of actors and support is essential. Next slide. So I wanted to close with some reflections on this governance landscape that we have in Barcelona at the moment and this multi-level architecture, and reflecting on these principles of urban food governance that we identified with some colleagues like Jane Battersby, Anna Davis, and Jill Clark, in order to reflect on how urban food governance can be taken forward. As I started my intervention, time matters, the importance of thinking about what has been done before, that it can inspire on what type of tools can be available. Sometimes we're very restricted on what type of tools cities have available to themselves, as well as other levels of governance. But we have seen extraordinary measures, for example, in terms of COVID, that maybe need to be taken to the fore to understand what is possible and what can be possible in terms of policy making. The second aspect is connecting to these place specificities. And as I mentioned before, in Barcelona, we have key challenges related to food, but they are also strongly linked to other challenges in the city. And as it was mentioned in the interventions before, this connection, for example, in terms of the right to food and the right to the city is essential in many cities, and in Barcelona it is as well. And we need to make those connections to avoid that food becomes another silo in city or in other governmental departments. All my presentation was about relations across the scales, but also across different types of areas, urban, peri-urban, also rural areas within Catalonia. And these relationships across actors is important to nurture them and to make them kind of like flexible and adaptable to different contexts, and recognize the different spaces where these relationships are built in order to increase resilience. The fourth element will be a bit about diversity. We're trying to bring to the fore the diversity of experiences, but also knowledges in order to build this agenda towards more sustainable food systems in the city. And a key aspect is how we integrate better the different experiences around inequality of food, and we bring it forward to different spaces of governance. And finally, power, of course, matters, and we have seen a lot of changes, discursive changes in Barcelona around the importance of food in different city agendas, and also created all these integrated food strategies. But we still need to come together to make sure that there are material changes realizing within the city. And for that purpose, it's very important that we align with other agendas in the city, and we start kind of like seeing the impact in terms of like sustainability outcomes, but also food and nutrition security outcomes. And with this, the next slide, thanks for your time, and looking forward to the questions and debate.
Thanks very much, Anna. And so I think now what we'll do is we'll move on to our next speaker. It was really wonderful that Anna presented the wonderful diversity and the powerful portfolio of innovations that across multiple dimensions, sectors and levels in Barcelona. But now next up is our next speaker, Alimsahe Sargawi from the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia. So I'm going to hand over to you, Alimsahe, who's our esteemed partner and colleague.
Thank you, Charles. So I am Alimsahe, working in Ministry of Agriculture. Today I would like to present on the eco-food system latest finding is policy innovation and sustainable healthy diet, affordable diet in Addis Ababa. That is a big city in Ethiopia and the center of the country. So presenting on that one. Next slide. Sorry, back. Food system city regional dietary transition challenges are by 2050, more than 70% of the world population will living in urban areas, majority living in city regions. Cities currently responsible for 70% of greenhouse gas emission. Rapidly growing nutrition-related health burden also it's happened, especially diabetes type 2 and cardiovascular disease and other non-communicable disease also increase from time to time. And the cost of healthy diet is around 3 billion around the world, according to the FAO findings. So the urban city dwellers need more nutritious diet and more food to consume for that one, because they are not producing around their area. So the urban city diets will increasingly dictate with how food is produced in rural areas. That is dictating the rural community how to produce. Eco-food system research and innovation project is EU funded. The project goal is to generate knowledge, evidence, and data decision support tools that enable city regional food system stakeholders to transition nutritionally marginalized consumers towards the diet that are more sustainable, healthy, and affordable. So the goal of the project is this one, knowledge and evidence data driven. The eco-food system organized two workshops. It's implemented in Addis Ababa and Vietnam. In Addis Ababa, I'm presenting for that one. The project led by University of Galway in partnership with Reklo and Wageningen University, funded by EU. This project is led by the university, so it's aligned with CFS policy recommendations on strengthening urban and pre-urban food system, presented for consideration and engagement by CFS plenary this week. The project focused on Addis Ababa, as mentioned, as that one. With this, Addis Ababa is fast-growing city that is around 5.7 million people living dwellers. Now, even now, it's increasing from time to time. So many people are migrate from rural area to Addis. So many people are sitting in this one. The project organized two workshops, and the first workshop was done in March, and around more than 100 people are participating from different areas, that is from universities, research institutes, government and non-governmental organizations. The program is organized by Public Health Institute and the university. During that time, the participants identified strong coordination, the need for strong coordination with the food system, urban and pre-urban food system across governance level, and improved policy coherence instead of silo thinking. The coherence between sectors is important for the policy, and the participation of formal and informal actors, especially the informal market actors, cooperatives, vulnerable consumers in food system decision making is important. No one behind is necessary, so that is why they are identified this kind of issues during the meeting time. On the second eco-food system, around high-level expertise participating in around 20, and they focusing on the best bit innovations, that is on the policy, institutional, and the governance issues are focusing. So the participants identified on the policy issues what are the major policies to move forward the urban and the pre-urban agriculture and the food system. There are around 14 policies identified. Out of 14 policies, 4 of them are identified high score. So the first one is National Agriculture Rural Development Policy, which is led by Ministry of Agriculture. And the second one is Nutrition Sensitive Agri-Food System Strategy, same to lead by Ministry of Agriculture. And the third one is Ethiopian Food-Based Dietary Guideline, led by Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Education, and Ethiopian Public Health Institute. And the fourth one is National School Feeding Program, that is led by Ministry of Education. These are the measure and contributor for the food system, pre-urban and urban food systems. That's why out of 14 policies, we are identified only 4 measured ones. And according to the table summarizes with stakeholders. We are policy, around 4 policies, and the reason for success, what are the reason to success this one, and what are the challenges, and how success is measured within this. It is summarized in this table. With key policies in agriculture, nutrition, dietary guideline, and school feeding, Ethiopia has strong foundation for food system transformation that provides a comprehensive framework connecting production, consumption, and nutrition outcomes. So these first policies are connected directly to the production and consumption, because without production, we cannot to consume. Important and consume is difficult, it's not sustainable, so within the country, production is necessary. And producing and consuming is important to reduce malnutrition and to maintain our health, our community health, and the nutrition outcomes of one of the outcomes of the food system. And the other thing is multi-sectoral mechanisms, such as the National Food-Based Dietary Guideline framework, which clearly coordinated together with 3 ministries, which is education, health, and agriculture sectors. This shows that where multiple ministries share responsibility, progress has been visible when roles and the budgets are clearly defined. And the reason one of the success for this one is social behavioral communication change is important. Identified one of the effective level for dietary improvement. Both food-based dietary guideline and the nutrition-sensitive agri-food system strategy has promoting dietary diversity and awareness creation. For this one, behavioral change communication is important. Whether the production is available, accessible, even affordable, if the communities are not changing their behavior, they stick on staple crops or one type of food crops. So social behavioral communication change is one of the crucial important thing to success for the food system, the policies. Strengthen coordination mechanism between national ministries and city level authorities is important. In the national agriculture rural development policy, in the nutrition agri-food system, in all policies are linked with Addis Ababa school feeding program as well as urban agriculture program. So linking and multi-sectoral coordination is important. Collaboration is important instead of competition and competition. Competition is not good for our development and for the success of our pre-urban and urban food system. So cooperation is necessary and multi-sectoral collaboration is important. And the other thing is stakeholders explored where innovation is still needed with frameworks previously identified 3 dimensions, which is policy, institution, and governance. For the National Agriculture Rural Development Policy, participants emphasized the significant updates. That is, after 30 years, we utilized one policy for 30 years. After 30 years, the new revised agricultural rural development policy incorporates nutrition as one of the major components within their pillars. So this is one of the innovative issue for our country. If agriculture is not considered nutrition, it is difficult to get nutrient-dense agricultural products. That's why nutrition is one of the major components incorporated in the agriculture sector. They also highlight chance for community involvement and enhanced food security strategies. The current challenge is to make sure that this structure operates effectively at both regional and city levels. In the agriculture rural development policy, one of the major actors is community. Without community, we cannot implement the policy at grassroots level. So one of the components is considering about the commitment and participation of community. For the second listed policy, nutrition-sensitive agri-food system strategy, the group emphasizes implementation capacity, guaranteeing defined structure at different levels. Without structure, we cannot implement. Nutrition-sensitive agri-food system needs about strong structure from top to down. That means from federal to regional level, we have a governmental structure, and up to district and Kabale or village level. So it needs about structures. That is professional expertise to join. If they are joining in the agriculture sector, the nutrition agri-food system can implement easily, because the nutrition agri-food system focus on the consumption, changing the behavior of the consumption and cooking demonstration and value addition to increase the shelf life of the products, and to link with urban cities, adding value products. This kind of necessary activities is implemented through expertise. So structure is important, that is identified by expertise. And the other participants consider the transition from nutrient-based approach to food-based approach. Maybe the previous one is focusing on nutrient-based, but now the Ethiopian is identified that is focusing on food-based approach, that is food-based approach. If we are focusing on food-based approach, we can get all nutrients, all micronutrients, all different things. And on the other thing, food-based approach is cost-effective and sustainable. And food-based approach it's good for prevention. Prevention is better than curative. So food-based approach is better than for us. So we identified during the collaboration, during the meeting time, also this one. The National School Feeding Program framework also highlighted in its significant societal effects. easing the financial system on parents, enhancing educational environment, and decreasing malnutrition levels. So the enrollment of the students also increased because in Addis Ababa there is a school feeding agency. So they feed all children in all elementary schools. So this is one of the important policy framework for food system. This underscores that Ethiopia policy environment is dynamic and changing it. Future progress will rely on more closely connecting this structure through robust institutional and constitute governance. And the other thing is on the considering the implementation, the same that is contributing multiple outcomes, the food and the nutrition sustainability. We are prioritizing the high to low ranked. That is the same agriculture is the first one, nutrition sensitive second. National food safety and quality strategy also one of the major component, and the food system roadmap. We have 24 game-changing solutions and clustered into 7 clusters. On the environmental side, also the food system is the first one. On the economic and livelihood outcome, the agriculture sector. On the social and equity outcome, also national agriculture and rural development policy is the first, because it's a job opportunity for youth and women and for vulnerable groups. These are the prioritized on the multiple outcomes for Addis Ababa city. Coming to the last, this is the last slide for me, Addis Ababa City Regional Food System Policy, Institutional Governance, Innovation, key message from Ethiopian experience. One is policy coherence is critical. If the agriculture sector develops their own policy and focusing on their policy only, it's difficult to change the behavior of the community and also to solve the malnutrition problem. So it's difficult also creating linkage between urban and pre-urban areas with rural communities. So coherence of policy with different sectors is important. And spanning multiple levels, that is national, city, regional, district levels, coherence is necessary. And the second one is policy implementation can be accelerated by institutional and governance innovation is the second one. And the third one is stakeholder participation, representation, engagement, and ownership. That is all no one behind, all stakeholders should and must be to participating in policy process. Implementation is critical for accelerating impact at scale level. These are the message to transfer for this audience for the time being. Thank you for giving this opportunity and listening to me.
Thanks very much, Lemsahe. That's really excellent to see from the Ethiopia national and Addis Ababa city regional perspective. I'm going to ask Guido how much time we have for questions and answers so that I can kind of titrate how much time we have.
In principle, we have 5 minutes left, but probably if we go over 5 more minutes, maybe if we have 5 minutes for question, then we can close.
Yeah, okay, let's go in that way. So what I think I'm going to do is, rather than ask each of the participants or the speakers, the excellent speakers in turn to ask a question, I think we might take a more freestyle approach, which I'll just pose a question, and if any of you feel you can answer the question, then please do. Right. So the first question really is, how do you think that cities and national governments can build stronger vertical policy linkages to integrate urban food system priorities into national climate and food security strategies? It's really that question of how do you relate the policy processes at the city level with those at the national level and across the national policies. If anybody would like to speak to that of the speakers, just your reflections. It would be really great to hear your thoughts. Any of the speakers want to? Yeah, Patricia? Okay, cool.
Sim, posso reforçar a ideia de que para o Brasil, todas as agendas que temos fomentados com o município se relacionam na perspectiva de alimentação e resiliência climática. Tanto a discussão de programas de agricultura urbana, que tem essa característica de resiliência, tornar as cidades mais verdes, poluir menos e enfim, gerar uma maior resiliência à questão climática, a questão das cozinhas solidárias, que são espaços e tecnologias da própria comunidade que apoiam processos de adaptação climática, de apoio. Foi uma experiência muito concreta que o Brasil teve no desastre climático que aconteceu no Rio Grande do Sul. E um outro aspecto importante é colocar nos planos e nas estratégias municipais, nos planos estratégicos, no desenvolvimento de políticas públicas que façam essa relação muito clara de políticas de alimentação, clima, combate à fome, combate à pobreza, porque todos os sistemas estão interligados.
Thanks very much, Patricia. So the next question really, and again, and the reflections of the speakers would be good. So to what extent are rights-based approaches or the guiding principles, such as the right to food or the right to the city, being integrated into the transformation processes at national or city regional level in your city regions or other city regions? Like, so it would be good to hear of the challenges and the opportunities in relation to integration of rights-based approaches. Anybody want to talk to that point? Anna, over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. I had my hands raised for the previous one. I will just say about the previous one. I think as Daniel was highlighting and was part of the report of the HLP-19 report, I think a better mapping of the different powers and competencies at the different levels, so that the national and the local and cities have like a better grasp on what are their responsibilities, but also their potentials to do things. I think that would be very useful in terms of like coordinating better the national and the cities. In terms of the right to food approach, I think one of the challenges that we're facing is that right now is getting kind of like more traction, developing a right to food approach, I think, in food strategies, at least in Europe as well. And we still need kind of like implement those guidelines and get more training and knowledge about how we do that within civil society to push for that, but also within national and local governments. And there are some kind of like movements around that. For example, Catalonia is considering kind of like embedding the right to food approach in some of the pieces of policy that is developing at the moment.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to direct the next question to Lemsehe. The nutrition-sensitive agri-food strategy in Ethiopia highlights the need for defined structures and adequate resources to address nutrition challenges. What do you think are the key institutional or technological innovations required to enhance the implementation capacity at both national and city regional levels? So over to you, Lems.
The nutrition-sensitive agri-food system strategy needs defined structure to implement. They have 6 strategic objectives. So to implement these strategic objectives, it needs about structure. That means in each agriculture structure offices, it needs about food and nutrition expertise and other expertise rather than only crop or horticulture and something like that. So the nutrition team should be implemented, or dedicated staff should need about to implement the national nutrition sensitive agri-food system strategy. Because these experts can easily link the urban with the rural community, how to produce, especially the rural community, how to produce agricultural products and what kind of agricultural products to produce and how to utilize that one. That is, the food security have its own 4 components. One of the components is utilization. On the utilization part, it needs about the nutrition team or food and nutrition experts. So without structure, it's difficult. So to develop the capacity of rural community, structure, establishment of structure, strong, and is important for us.
Thanks, Lemsehe. So Guido, do we have time for one question from the audience, or are we stuck? Okay. So I'm just looking around the audience. We have, could you introduce yourself, your organization, and then your question?
Yeah, I'm a grad student at the American University of Rome studying environmental food policy. My question is for Patricia. You mentioned the food swamps and food deserts, and I'm wondering what kind of initiatives are going into education for those communities to eat better and not be indulged by their food environment. to kind of combat those issues you mentioned about like malnutrition and obesity and whatnot?
Obrigada pela pergunta. Na verdade, esse processo de diagnóstico dos desertos alimentares é muito recente, foi a partir do ano passado, e ele tem orientado a priorização de políticas nas cidades exatamente para estes locais. Porque o que acontecia muito nas cidades é desenvolver políticas públicas de segurança alimentar e nutricional sem a perspectiva territorial. E nós conseguimos identificar, por meio desses locais, um outro olhar dos gestores públicos para implementar as políticas. Então, por exemplo, onde tem deserto alimentar, é direcionado esforços locais, como, por exemplo, feiras públicas, fomento da cozinha solidária, criação de restaurantes populares, parceria com sacolões populares. Então, tem um conjunto de equipamentos públicos e sociais, porque entendemos que isso tem que ser política pública para dar conta desse vazio assistencial, que tem que ser direcionado para esses locais. Alguns municípios já avançaram, outros municípios estão em processo de organização das suas prioridades. Tem apoio do governo federal com alguns programas e tem muito inovação local dos próprios municípios. E agricultura urbana também.
Okay, so I think at that we're going to hand over to Guido and Elizabeth to really do the wrap up and the closing remarks. But before that, I'd like to say a round of applause for all of the speakers and it's done a wonderful job.
Bom, antes de mais nada, eu quero agradecer, e acredito que é um agradecimento coletivo, pelas 3 experiências que foram apresentadas, extremamente, ao mesmo tempo, diversas, porque vêm de realidades distintas, continentes distintos, mas que têm algumas características que são muito comuns e que dialogam com a síntese das propostas que eu apresentei em relação aos 2 relatórios do painel de especialistas. A questão alimentar, em geral, e nas cidades em particular, são de tamanha complexidade que não há como não buscar a interação, a interlocução e a articulação entre políticas públicas. Acho que essa é uma questão que, de maneira distinta, apareceu em todas as 3 experiências. Agora, para além de uma articulação no nível da política, da gestão pública, há um processo também de compreender as cidades de uma maneira distinta e menos dicotômica, como nós há algum tempo compreendíamos. O campo produzindo e a cidade consumindo. Não é mais essa perspectiva. A cidade também se alimenta, no sentido de experiências ligadas à agricultura urbana, diferentes formas de diminuir o circuito, né? A grande questão é como fazemos para que a comida chegue mais fácil nas casas, nas pessoas, nas famílias. E não qualquer alimento, mas o alimento saudável, o alimento produzido de uma maneira sustentável, porque essa também é uma questão fundamental, né? A questão hoje, as múltiplas crises, apesar que há uma compreensão que não são crises, de fato, são questões estruturais dos nossos sistemas alimentares. Tem também a agenda climática, que não pode ser desconsiderada, seja porque ela gera consequências importantes em desafios para acesso à alimentação nas cidades, como também é um fator de ampliação das desigualdades e da pobreza, seja no campo, seja na cidade. Então, esse é um aspecto também muito importante. Interessante também ver como que essa demanda por uma governança multi-escalar, multi-atores, multissetorial, ganha particularidades muito específicas a depender da realidade dos países ou das cidades, né? Por exemplo, Barcelona fala que tem um histórico, né? Tem uma história de políticas públicas em diálogo participativos. Brasil tem uma história, mas não tão antiga quanto Barcelona, e tem uma organização. A Etiópia também traz uma experiência de oficinas, de articulação de setores. Acho que a grande conclusão desse encontro é que aqui nós tivemos 3 experiências e muito bom que nós tenhamos muitas mais, que não há espaço para uma sessão tão curta, mas que a agenda de alimentação se tornou de fato uma agenda urbana. Isso demanda também uma nova geração de políticas públicas, né? O ambiente urbano, os modos de viver, os desafios urbanos trazem a necessidade de políticas públicas baseadas em evidências, mas não evidências que sejam áridas, né, que sejam exclusivamente acadêmicas, mas experiências também conectadas com a realidade dos diferentes territórios, para que essas experiências que são geradas a partir da vida, do cotidiano das pessoas, sejam também incorporadas às políticas públicas. Nós temos bons exemplos em relação a isso, que foram apresentados. Acredito que a gente está passando de geração de como compreender a cidade, como compreender a alimentação da cidade, para que o Estado, né, enquanto organizador do bem público e do bem comum, reassuma essa responsabilidade e garanta progressivamente o direito humano à alimentação adequada para todas as pessoas, considerando os desafios contemporâneos que nós temos hoje. Muito obrigada, foi uma sessão... Da minha parte, acredito que posso falar em nome de todos e todas, muito, muito boa. Muito obrigada.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and I join in thanking everybody for the contribution. I just want to conclude that the discussion of today are really in line and are complementing the discussions we are having this week in Rome, through the link between the HLP 19 and the 20. And I will also remind that yesterday the policy recommendations for urban and peri-urban food systems were presented and endorsed with some exceptions by all the members. And this is an important milestone that will somehow help translating what we are discussing now today into policy and action. Having said that, I would like to thank everybody, and I hope we can keep in contact and keep the ball rolling. Thank you so much.